Hey guys, I am Pixel Dan, and today we are going to be checking out the Skeletor and Screech 2-pack for the Masters of the Universe Origins line. After we got the Teela and Zoar 2-pack, we all sort of knew that Screech had to be coming. And this is one that I've been pretty excited about ever since it was announced, just because I loved the entire package here. I thought it looked so incredibly cool. But of course, I'm also excited to get Screech there as well to complete the vintage birds in the Origins lineup. So as you can see, comes in this beautiful window box packaging with Skeletor and Screech both in there. I do love the illustration down here on the bottom with the child playing with Screech, with the call out letting you know that you can make the wings flap and snap on the battle backpack. Has a very vintage feel to it. Now over here, I do love that we've got this little tab that says Collector's Edition inspired by vintage artwork. That's something we haven't seen, I don't think, in Origins yet. Not a call out like this. Even though much of the artwork is inspired by the vintage lineup. But specifically, what they are talking about is this particular 2-pack is based on the vintage 2-pack with the artwork on there with Skeletor with Screech kind of perched on his arm. Now, they even paid homage to that with the current artwork on the packaging. It's brand new artwork up here. But even the colors on the included Skeletor figure are supposed to mimic the color scene in that original painting that was used on the vintage packaging. So that is pretty neat. I do like to see them homaging the artwork because the artwork is such a huge part of Masters of the Universe, both in the vintage line and the current lines. So really cool stuff. As we rotate this around to the back side, of course, we've got a cross-sell showing other figures in the lineup. We've got our action feature call-outs with Screech, and then up at the top, more gorgeous artwork with Skeletor sending Screech into battle against Zoar. So why don't we go ahead and open up this beautiful box and get a closer look at the action figures within. All right, so we've got our new Skeletor and our Screech outside of the packaging, so we can take a closer look at them. Why don't we go ahead and move Screech off to the back, and we will start by focusing on the brand new Skeletor here. So I've already got him armed up and everything, because there's not a ton to talk about here, just a few things that I really want to focus on. First of all, he's obviously very similar to all the Skeletors we've had before. This looks like the same base body that we've seen with them, the same armor set and everything there. The biggest difference with those pieces is the paint deco, which I already talked about when we were talking about the packaging. It's got a very unique color scheme where it's almost more of like a pinkish purple with like these near orange highlights on there, and that's because they are specifically trying to mimic that vintage artwork, which they also recreated on the new box. So it definitely makes for a very unique new look for Skeletor. But just to bring in one of the other Skeletors, let's just bring in like standard old bone face from wave 1 here. Looking at them side by side, you can see there's a huge difference in the color purple that is used between the two figures. And with this new one having like a brand new head that we're going to talk more about in just a bit, it doesn't work too well for head swapping because then that hood is completely going to be mismatched with the other armor. So I'm of two minds of this. On one hand, I do think this is pretty cool. I like that they were trying to give us something different with Skeletor and that they're homaging the vintage artwork, so that is really cool. But they gave us this brand new head that has an articulated jaw. Look at this. So you can actually open and close the mouth. This is the first time we've ever had this on a Skeletor figure at this particular scale. They did it once in Masterverse already as well, but like articulating the jaw on Skeletor is such a no-brainer, and it's so fun. I mean, look at that. That is a very, very fun effect. So that brings me to the other side of things, because while I do think it's cool that they gave us this new unique paint deco to make him stand out, the fact that we've got this new head with the opening mouth but can't swap it with our other Skeletors because the colors don't match is a bummer. Like, that's a bit of a letdown. I don't know if that's because they have plans for another Skeletor at some point that's going to reuse this head that will actually match these colors, but man, it's like one of those things where it's like, catch-22 here. I love the new paint design. I hate that it doesn't match up with the other figures specifically because of that new head. But then the argument there is also like, if he had the right colors, you wouldn't really need to swap that head on unless you wanted to use that head for like Battle Armor Skeletor or Terror Claw Skeletor or Dragon Blaster Skeletor. You get the idea. So there's that. Just wanted to throw that out there, as I'm sure it's something folks will be discussing. Otherwise, this Skeletor is pretty great. I do love that opening and closing mouth. I will say his mouth does seem to hang open a lot more than it stays closed. It's not super loose, but you can see how every time I close it, it kind of sags down just a little bit there, so it's kind of opened up. I will say it kind of looks better when the mouth is open too. I don't know. He's got like this extra space under his chin on the hood, which allows for that articulated jaw, and it looks a little weird from some angles, but lower the head there. That actually looks pretty cool. I don't know. I like it. I think it's fun. I'm glad they tried something different with this Skeletor. The other thing I want to talk about, though, is the armor, because one thing I really noticed with this is the armor seems to be made of a lot softer and pliable material than we've seen the armor made from in the past. And this poses issues with this particular piece right here. It has a very hard time staying latched. Out of the package, he came out like this, and I had a heck of a time getting this like latched because this is so soft and gummy. This peg just folds. So even when you do get it latched, like over time, the pressure is just going to make this thing come apart again because this is so soft. It just has no hold. It just won't stay in place. So that's a bit strange. And then I noticed that same pliable plastic was used in the Havoc staff as well. Like this, look at this. This is way softer and gummier than we've ever seen on a Havoc staff before. I mean, let me just double check that real quick. Let me double check that. Like, we always had some pliability on the Havoc staff, so this is like a wave 1 over here. But look at how much more this one seems to move. I don't know. This feels, to me, a lot softer. It's probably because it was part of the same mold as the armor. So I'm not sure what happened there. I don't know if there was a change for that. Maybe it has something to do with them being part of the mold with Screech too. I actually have no idea if that's what's going on. Though they're molded in different colors, so that's probably not the case. I don't know. I'm just speculating and rambling at this point. There's Skeletor. Let's move on to Screech, who is probably the star of the show, or at least intended to be the star of the show. So in this line, we've already received Zoar. And just to bring her in to stand them side by side, you can see that just like with the vintage line, it's a reuse of sculpt, just with a new paint deco, and the armor and the perch is also the same, but this time it's molded in sort of a dark red color as opposed to the very bright red that was used on Zoar. Very interesting stuff that I already talked about in the Zoar review, but I will repeat that, is the fact that for this particular line, Mattel opted to just basically reuse the tooling from the vintage bird. Now, I don't know if it's exactly the same. I think that they rebuilt it, or at least just used the old one for inspiration, because I will say, like, the little trigger here is shaped slightly different than the vintage. It's got this extra little tab for your thumb on the back there, but it's a very classic Mattel toy that still has the same action feature where you push that lever on his back and the wings flap. And I don't know, I do kind of love this because, like I said, classic Mattel toy that dates back to the Big Jim line in the 60s and 70s, where we had an eagle and we had a hawk. Then it was reused for Masters of the Universe with Zoar and Screech. So the fact that they're still reusing this same toy design all these years later, I don't know. I think it's fun. I can totally see how some people might think that they should have tried to redo this, but man, it is what it is, I guess. I think it's worth pointing out that we should bring in our comparison time now. I just think it's a good idea to show the new one with the original one. So over here is the original Zoar. And you can see one of the things with him is that the wings are a lot straighter on the original one. Now that actually can vary depending on the figure that you get. Sometimes they're bent more, sometimes they're more straight. But part of this is because these are made, while they're pliable, they're still made of a thicker, stronger feeling plastic. plastic than the ones on the new figures, which feel like straight up like rubber. They are so soft and flexible. It was the same for Zoar. So I do wish that there was a little bit more rigidness to them because of the way they kind of flop on the new one there. You can see the difference in the flapping. But otherwise, it's a really fun recreation of that vintage toy. There's the levers that I was talking about. You can see it's actually much bigger. It's a bit more prominent on the new one, I guess. But it's a very, very similar design to that of the vintage. So here, let me just bring this into. So we got vintage perch. We've got modern perch. We'll get both of our Screeches up on perches here. And just to complete this comparison time, this is the smaller version of Screech that they did for the Masters of the Universe Classics line, where they opted to scale the birds down to being like normal-sized birds. So we've got that one in there as well. And there are our 3 Screeches from the various toy lines over the years. So I suppose it is also worth mentioning, if you didn't already know, the armor here is removable. It just pulls right off of Screech. So if you'd rather display him like this, or like how most of the vintage ones are usually found missing his armor, you could do that. I love the red eyes. The paint deco has always been so awesome on Screech with that dark purple and like pinkish purple. I think it's a really good color scheme, and the dark red armor is nice. The armor just slides right over his head, kind of clips down on his tail, works exactly like the vintage one. And of course, the clawed feet there are also meant so that he could perch on the arm of a figure. Just like with Battle Cat, and everything. The figure was originally designed for a toy line that was much bigger, but it does still work standing on the arm of Skeletor there, which is actually pretty cool. And you can mimic that vintage box art, which is pretty awesome. So there you go, my friends. That is a look at the brand new Screech and Skeletor 2-pack from the Masters of the Universe Origins line. I think this is fun. Obviously, I had a few things that I was picky on, but for the most part, I think this is a really fun figure set. I'm just so happy to see the birds in this line. I love seeing that vintage tradition continue. So good set, all in all. Really nice packaging, too, if you're a mint on card collector. So this is, I believe, is a online retailer exclusive. I specifically ordered mine through BigBadToyStore.com, so I will link to it in the video description. Thank you guys so very much for watching this video, and until next time.